Hey guys!
Hey!
Welcome back to Tandem Fandom. I'm Mick.
I'm Courtney.
And today we're unveiling our newest series, War with Words, a Monday night retrospective.
And in this series we will be providing an in-depth analysis and commentary on the most crucial and influential period in pro wrestling history, the Monday Night Wars.
That's right, the head-to-head battle between WWF's Monday Night Raw and WCW's Monday Nitro. Two titans of the industry who clashed for 6 years on prime-time TV.
And the constant one-upsmanship between the two brands led WWE to being the sole superpower it is today.
Whereas the WWE has its own version of this history in their Monday Night Wars documentary, but things are always told a little bit different from those who won the war.
So we decided to go into the history books ourselves and see how things actually played out.
So let's dive right into what we felt was the most pivotal point in the beginning of the war, June 10th, 1996.
At this point, WWF was in the second round of its King of the Ring tournament,
which one could argue is the most important King of the Ring tournament in wrestling history.
And WCW was heading into their summer pay-per-view, The Great American Bash.
And as with any wrestling show, the most important part of the show is, of course, the wrestling. And both shows definitely put on a great quality of matches.
That's right. But with Raw only being an hour long, of course, they had a lot less matches than WCW. But the matches they did have had a little bit more time, and it really seemed like they were showcasing the King of the Ring participants.
Which, that's the whole point of the King of the Ring tournament anyway, is it's an opportunity where everybody's on an even playing field and nobody has an advantage over another guy. You can take a world champion and put him against, a tag team specialist, and they're considered to be on equal footing, which is kind of what we saw with the opening match on Raw with Yokozuna versus Owen Hart.
Right.
Now, Owen wasn't necessarily a tag team specialist. I mean, by this point, he's former King of the Ring, two-time Slammy Award-winning recipient?
Yeah.
I guess. So it's a little different, but they did have some story behind this match, former tag partners going against each other.
Right.
And it's a good way to kick the show off. You've got a former world champion and a guy who is becoming a legit star for you in Owen Hart.
What was a little strange, though, was as soon as the show started, Yokozuna was already in the ring.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that, where you don't even give your champion music or anything.
No entrance. Actually, they didn't even do an intro to the show itself.
Yeah, which was a little disappointing because I feel like it should feel grand, but again, it is a taped program at this point, so maybe they did like one big entrance to start all the tapings off, and then they would just sound the siren after that.
Right.
But the match itself, I felt, was pretty solid considering what Owen was able to do with Yoko. I mean, at 660-some pounds...
666.
Excuse me.
They billed him as.
Yeah, so at that weight, it's going to be difficult for Yoko to do very much in the way of athleticism or...
length of the match.
Yeah, oh, definitely. I mean...
It was the shortest match on the card, of course.
Yeah, and the ending was a little strange where Yoko just kind of falls.
Yeah, he gets on the second rope in the turnbuckle and just... and Owen gets the pin.
Yeah, he kind of humped...
dirty pin.
Yeah, which was kind of like, alright, he's a heel, they're building a good, strong story with that, but Yoko pulling like a Humpty Dumpty impression, it was just really strange to me, but I'm interested to see where they go with that. The story, off of that. Has Yoko lost his touch? What's it gonna be? But the match of the night for Raw, at least for me, was between Wildman Mark Miro and Skip of the Body Donnas, Chris Candido.
Absolutely. It was a high-energy match. Both guys were evenly matched athletically and really played off of each other very well.
Oh yeah, well, this is kind of what I was saying, where here's an opportunity to highlight guys, because Mark Miro was a newer talent that they had. Chris Candido, again, he's a tag team guy, like he's a part of the Body Donnas, but this was an opportunity to let him shine as a singles competitor. And Mark Miro, again, they made a substantial investment in him. He's got the manager, he's got the look, the kind of bigger over the top entrance with his and the whip and the music, so But I love this match. I thought it was great. It reminded me a lot of what you would see today. You know, there was a lot of athleticism, some pretty cool high spots, a lot of top rope type maneuvers, over the rope maneuvers, and it was cool to see. Especially 20 years ago, I was like, wow, this is a great match.
Right.
Like, it really stood out to me. So
that is one thing that I would like to say. These matches and these shows, they actually really stood the test of time.
Oh, definitely. This one in particular, I mean, the Yoko and Owen one was more of a spectacle, you know, just because, again, Yoko's limited, but this one, it just had everything I think I look for in a match, you know. Both guys got their shine. The ending seemed like there may have been a slight botch on Miro's part because it looked like he landed straight on his head, but it was still really good match until that point because I was like, oh no.
Yeah, but he got up, he shook it off.
Yeah, and you know they gave the guys time, like you were saying, that they really let him go out there and put on a good.
Yeah,
I feel like this seemed like a 15-minute match.
Yeah, it was the bulk of the bulk of the middle of the show.
Yeah, because when we were watching, you were like, man, this match is really long, which I think that's kind of what you want from some of these matches with King of the Ring tournament.
Well, especially with how much they seem to be divvying it up. Yeah,
it was a little odd. Like, I wish we'd wrote down the times because now I'm a little curious to see who got the longest, where it's like, did you give Taker a lot of time, or was it literally Mark Miro and Skip were the bulkier show, which is kind of funny. But like I was just saying, Undertaker faced British Bulldog in the main event. I did enjoy this match, but it was a much different tone and a much different style of match than Wildman and Skip.
It wasn't quite the athletic showcase. It was more gimmicky, more of a spot fest kind of match, where Taker does Undertaker stuff.
Yes, spot fest in the sense of like the gimmicks, not necessarily like well, he did a 450 splash, and then he did the kip up.
Undertaker hit a moonsault.
Yeah, man,
shooting star press.
Guy's a freak if he is an undead wizard if he's doing that stuff. But no, it was still a good match, and they got in kind of like Taker's signature spots. You know, the top rope, you know, the old school, the choke slam, the sit up. They did the sit up like 4 or 5 times. I was like, does he do it this much? Like now it seems like
they really save it for the end.
Yeah, it seems like he does like the one big one, but in this match it was just constantly like like every 2 seconds.
Paul Bearer with the urn.
That's true. They did work the urn a lot. You know, like Paul Bearer's Undertaker. Yeah, so they worked that spot a lot. You had Jim Cornette. You know, well, he was on commentary for this match. In Owen's match, he was just on the outside. But you had Jim Cornette out there.
He's Bulldog's manager.
Yeah, and did Bulldog's wife come out with him? I believe. Yeah, she and Owen both came out. So, yeah, man. So, interesting match, and of course, they did a nice job of preserving both guys.
Because British Bulldog is going into the King of the Ring pay-per-view as a heavyweight contender.
Yeah, going against the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. Wow!
So you don't want to have the Undertaker bury him, no pun intended, but you also don't want to lose momentum with the Undertaker being this grand monster that he is.
Oh, definitely. So they go with the count-out victory by Mankind interference, which I really like because pretty much every match on this card had some story tied into it, one way or another. You know, like Mark Miro and Chris Candido didn't have like a storyline between them, but they had the story in there, a part of the King of the Ring.
Right.
And they had Jake the Snake come down and do commentary, and he's heavily into the tournament. Yoko and Owen, they played up the, I just couldn't stop thinking of Jim Cornette on the outside. Maybe Yoko needs to change. Or whatever it is he said.
He just doesn't have it anymore, or something like that.
You had Taker and Mankind, Mankind attacking him, hit the pile driver, building that kind of rivalry and story. So I really liked that.
Yeah.
That every match mattered. There was no
everything
throwaway.
had a point.
Yeah, so that was it was really cool and a really good aspect that I enjoyed about the matches on this, because I feel that's important, that you want to have most of your matches on your card mean something.
Right.
You don't want to just have throwaway matches.
Yeah.
There are too many, like 1 or 2.
Well,
whatever.
especially when you only have an hour to go.
And only 3 matches on the card.
Right. But with Nitro, they had 2 hours.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
They utilized both hours so well. They packed it with 8 matches.
Yeah, which is, I think, exactly what you want to do is, and I would be curious to see what Eric Bischoff's kind of game plan was, if he really looked at, like, the Raw the week before and said, okay, if they have 4 matches, I'm doing 8. If they had 3, I'm doing 10, you know, like, because it certainly feels that way, and I think they started their show off a little stronger. Yes, Yoko's a former champion. Owen is a pretty high mid-card level guy, but in terms of just match quality, Booker T and Scott Steiner had a fantastic match.
Yeah, good knockdown, drag out, very equally athletically matched.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
It really just seemed like they wanted to tear each other down.
Oh, yeah, and it's cool, too, because you look at these 2 guys, I think it's really neat that they opened with these 2 guys in particular at this point in their careers, because Scott Steiner and both Booker T are tag team specialists at this point. You know, they haven't really had singles runs. They're primarily associated with being tag team wrestlers. So for them to come out and not even have their tag team partners with them, I think was really, it speaks volumes at the, I guess, faith that management had in these guys are going to go out and put on a great match.
Right, and well-placed faith, because what happens if we fast forward a little bit?
Oh, you know, the final Nitro that WCW puts out, Scott Steiner and Booker T are wrestling each other for the World Championship. So, that when you know that, for me, that made this match much cooler, because I'm watching the match, I'm like, man, this is such a good match. And I realized these guys faced each other in the final Nitro for the World Championship after both becoming legitimate stars for that brand. You know, they were world champions. They were very well received, and it's just really cool to look back 20 years ago and see, man, look at this.
Yeah,
this is kind of
opening
where
the show and just burning the house down, and you know, obviously the brand just had well-placed faith, and
it was smartly put there. I mean, it was really, really cool.
I'm excited to see the journey, especially since I know how it ends.
Oh, yeah. So, you know, I think they opened strong. Again, I don't think there was necessarily a built-in storyline for this match.
Right.
Outside of, like, it can kind of build a rivalry between the Steiners and the Harlem Heat because, well, I beat you, and then the tag teams can get a win. Or, you know, Stevie Ray can beat, you know, Rick Steiner maybe. And you can just kind of build a feud through there. But we did see a debut, which was really cool.
Yeah.
Wrestling legend Big Jim Powers against Diamond Dallas Page.
And
some guy named DDP.
Yeah, some guy, I don't know.
Yeah, but Jim Powers made his debut. You know, everybody... Jim Powers clearly a household name at this point.
Well, it's an appropriate name for him. I mean, he was... But, well, maybe not Big Jim. Powers. I'll give him Powers.
Maybe
but,
Wide Jim would be better than Big Jim.
Like, big, but not really compared to other people, Big Jim.
He's not big and tall Jim, that's for sure.
Because when DDP makes it to the ring, DDP looks like he's the Undertaker compared to this guy.
And Jim Powers looked like Rey Mysterio. Well, no, like, Powers is making his entrance, and I'm looking at him, and I'm kind of like, man, I forgot, like, how jacked Jim Powers was. Because I haven't really seen a Jim Powers match, and probably since it was happening live.
Right.
But, you know, I'm like, wow, man, Jim Powers is jacked, and he's all tan, and he looks great, and why wouldn't Vince McMahon have gone after this guy? And then I realized that the referee was the exact same height. And I was like, oh. That's why he did not go after Jim Powers. But
still, a good match.
Yeah, it was a really solid match. You know, DDP with the diamond cutter out of nowhere.
Yeah.
You've got to watch out for that. You never know where the diamond cutter is going to strike. And that's the really great thing about the diamond cutter.
You also never know where a self-high five's going to come from. Bang!
Really enjoyed this match because I love heel DDP. I think heel DDP is my favorite DDP. He's a great
the outfits.
Yeah, and just his swagger. He's chomping on the cigar and the gum and the self high five.
Bang.
So yes, DDP transitions into being one of the biggest stars that WCW ever had, especially a babyface star, but I loved heel DDP, and they kept building on the fact that he was the Lord of the Ring. He's got the big pinky ring, which, again, love it. He's gold chain, and a bro, bang! So, they are building off of, we're making DDP into a star.
Right.
He's somebody we're cultivating by, in a sense, the
battle ball.
Yeah, and he won that, so that's like, not necessarily a level of King of the Ring in terms of like popularity or like being well known,
but still a rub.
Yeah, exactly, which is what you want to give him. And again, he's beating a guy who's debuting, so it doesn't really hurt Jim Powers. Right. But again, another victim of the Diamond Cutter. Just like the Diamond Cutter, you never saw it coming. Bang! So,
moving on.
Moving on. Speaking of big stars.
Speaking of big stars, the third match, of course, had the biggest star of the hour, and that's Sting versus Ming.
King Haku for you WWF fans. Yeah, this I think is super smart, because if you had to match it up with Raw, I think from a timing perspective, this would have been in the middle, if not towards the middle end of
the Wild Man Skip match.
Yeah. So
maybe, commercials come on, you start channel surfing, and oh my goodness, there's Sting, I'm going to watch this show now.
Well, and back in the 90s, a lot of fans tried to watch both shows, because you would just like hit that nice recall button and go back to the previous channel. So if you're watching, Mark Miro and Skip, it hits commercial on Raw, and Nitro did this a lot. They would time, Raw's then commercial, go. Like,
wow.
They time that stuff like crazy. So if you flip over and you see the franchise Sting making his entrance, you ain't flipping that channel back to Mark Miro and Skip of the Body Donnas. No, you're going to watch Sting. So it was an okay match, not crazy. But again, we do find out that Sting is going to wrestle later in the evening.
A little bit later.
So that explains why it was kind of like a 5-minute he goes out. He didn't even do the step over into the Scorpion Deathlock.
Right.
He literally picked his legs up and it was already there. But, it's Sting, man. You're not going to go wrong with having Sting on the first hour of the show. It makes it a big deal, I think.
Right. And then the first hour starts to wind down, and we get Squire David Taylor.
Yes. With Jeeves.
Again, yes, with Jeeves, who he pushes down the ramp.
Which was nice.
Because he's such a class act. And Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Oh!
Which, crowd pop, easy excitement.
I think Hacksaw did more pumping up the crowd than he did wrestling moves in the course of this match.
Yeah, very short match. Obviously, just a little bit of hype before the second hour starts.
Yeah, he did like the tape thing where he's spun it around and the big punch and everything. But it was a nice match to kind of like get the crowd livened up, and then they started to transition into the second hour where they're going to do the big switch over. Scott Norton and the Giant are going to be in the next match, which didn't start till the second hour.
Right.
And the Giant didn't actually make his entrance until the second hour started.
Norton was already in the ring, and then they do a countdown before the top of the hour, and as soon as it hits, the fireworks go off, the new commentary team is in their seats, so as soon as Raw is over and you change the channel, you're getting a show.
Exactly. Vince Bischoff is there, and he's all like, welcome to Nitro! Wow! That's what he sounds like. I mean, we'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah.
But, Scott Norton and the Giant, at this point, he is the Jolly Green Giant. Like, he's very
fresh.
he's very inexperienced. He's gotten pushed to the moon, which is fine.
Which is fine. I mean, he's basically Andre reincarnate.
Yeah, and, I mean, they credit him as being 7'4". He is not. But, he's 7'4", and I think he was like 450 pounds, and I'm like, good lord, that's how much he's billed at today, and he is way bigger than he was back then.
So slim.
Yeah, so, but with this match, pretty Yeah, I don't think Giant took a bump.
Norton
took the choke slam, but Luger runs down. He runs the interference, and it was it served the purpose that it did.
Right.
Your world champion's on the show. He's in a match.
Right.
In the second hour to open, it's exactly what you should do.
A side note: the Giant is now the Big Show.
Luger! Like that's what he yells at Lex. I was like, why is his voice so high?
And him screaming because he literally just Luger, I'm gonna kick your ass. But it just sounds so ridiculous. If he wasn't so big, it wouldn't have been threatening at all.
Not at all. Again, they kind of wind the show down a little bit. They bring out Lord Steven Regal, who is... I love Regal so much. I mean, the guy is really just excellent at everything he does. He's such a good heel.
Yeah.
He knows his character. He knows everything he does is so good. And then a young Billy Kidman, who is on his way to becoming a star in his own right.
Yeah.
And he will one day be pretty big in the cruiserweight division. So it was kind of cool to see this match happen. I enjoyed it. Yeah, I like this.
Yeah,
I like Regal though. I mean, he could wrestle a broom and I'd be happy.
Absolutely. The next match was kind of a lull.
I got one thing to say about it. You can say whatever you want to say about it. I didn't like this match. I didn't care about Public Enemy versus the Nasty Boys. I thought it went way too long. Wasn't a fan. That's all I got to say on it.
Yeah, it was. It did. It went a little long. Maybe it was just they ran short and they needed some filler, so they gave them a little bit more time. They were trying to introduce more hardcore elements because,
which it looked tame by today's standards based on what they did. Yeah. I was like, real? I mean, it is 1996, but at this point, ECW's been around for a couple of years. I mean, that's where Public Enemy made their name.
Yeah.
So it's just...
But, a garbage can
terrible.
got thrown.
Somebody threw a chair.
And that was it. So the main event.
Yeah, which was a little bit of a change from what it was originally supposed to be, because they were advertising another debut of the Renegade and Jose Lothario. I think that's who they were saying. I don't know, because we never saw that match.
Yes.
But what we did see was a much better match in Ric Flair and Arn Anderson versus our World Tag Team Champions, our WCW World Tag Team Champions of Sting and Lex Luger, which is a much better match. And again, with this leading into the Great American Bash, more than likely we were not going to see the tag belts defended, so that's probably why.
So yeah, they made it a little more interesting. They made because the original opponents got beat up backstage,
which I really liked that aspect. I thought that was really cool.
So they threw the tag champions in there because they still had to have a match.
Yeah, and it was
it was a good match.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Pretty classic Ric Flair stuff. He took a lot of bumps.
He took that gorilla press bump probably about 10 times. It seemed. I was like, is that the only move that they're gonna do? Because
both Sting and Lex, it was.
I think Sting did it twice.
He did it. He did it at least 3 times.
It was, but still, it was a solid match. He and Arn. I really like the spot where they go out and Arn's like, time out.
Right.
Time out. We don't want to have another match. We need time out right now. We got damn time out.
Classic heel stuff.
Yeah, it was really
running away
cool.
from the match.
And you got Miss Elizabeth and Woman on the outside. Elizabeth always is just kind of there. She's never really doing anything.
Well, that's why she was so great opposite Macho. Because she's just so quiet. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. But it's a solid match. Ends in like the big fracas, like the Giant comes down and there's chairs. Like Scott Steiner makes a run in. They're hitting with chairs, and it's a big
hullabaloo.
Yeah, it was a really strong ending to lead in to your pay-per-view. If that had been the end of the show.
But it was not. We end with the commentary table, believe it or not.
Which, a little surprising if you didn't know what was coming. Which we did, but...
Well, of course we did.
It's one of the biggest moments ever, so...
But cut to Eric Bischoff and Bobby Heenan.
Yep.
Closing out the show. Heenan doing a little heated promo of his own.
You can't touch me! I wear glasses, and which was, Bobby Heenan just being classically awesome Bobby Heenan.
Talking about Macho Man coming after him because they're both coaching opposite teams, and they're going to fight,
And then Bobby drops his mic and runs, and Bischoff is like, you are backpedaling. You are really backpedaling.
Backpedaling now.
And sure enough, who comes creeping up but a bad guy? Scott Hall making an appearance again, having made a promise the week before that he had a big surprise for you, man.
A big surprise. What could that be?
I wonder. Sure enough.
Oh, Diesel.
Yeah.
I was like, Moose.
Sure. So sure enough, Kevin Nash makes his first appearance on WCW. Well, Kevin Nash, not Oz or Vinny Vegas or Master Steel. But Kevin Nash makes his first appearance on WCW television and cuts his now infamous promo of, so this is where the big boys play, huh? Check out the adjective, play, which...
Nash, we love you.
A lot.
Play is not an adjective.
I'm not gonna...
Mania.
But I get what he's trying to do.
But thank goodness the internet wasn't around.
Well, it was, but Al Gore was still building it out of tubes in his basement, so it wasn't quite as readily available as it is today. But, he cuts the big promo, and they make it known, like, we want to fight, we got you still don't have your 3 guys. Where's Hulk Hogan? Still filming Blunder in Paradise? Oh. Where's the Macho Man? Scott Hall's all... and mocking Macho is great, and, you get your 3 guys, we want to fight, and Bischoff says, well, if you show up to the Great American Bash, I'll see what I can do, which is, pretty cool. It's another reason that makes you go like,
oh, I need to pick up my rotary phone and call my operator to get this pay-per-view.
Operator, yes, I'd like to purchase WCW's Great American Bash. This is 1996. Cowabunga. So, it was a really strong ending to the show. And in terms of, segments that each show had, I like Nitro's a little bit better because they seem to have something attached to every moment of the show. Raw had some, but it was really toned down. Although, I really liked them showing their live event. I thought that was fantastic.
It was almost like a little commercial they had for the Attitude Adjustment tour.
Yeah.
Where they did house shows. And they showed some footage from one of the house shows. Like, oh, look how fun this is. Oh, Shawn Michaels took one of the cameras and now it's the clip cam. We're having so much fun. Buy tickets.
Oh, wait, that's not a thing.
Yet.
Yeah, not yet. Oh, not yet. Blow that out. Spoilers. But, yeah, it was really cool. It was a nice thing that really showed us, hey... We do live shows. If you don't see Raw,
you can't afford to go to the pay-per-view, go to a live show. It's fun.
Well, and that's a little bit different than it is today because there is SmackDown, there is NXT. They do so many live shows because the roster's so big. But back then they only really did they did 2 loops. That is right. They did the A loop and the B loop. But that was how you saw wrestling primarily back then, was going to live events. So. It was really cool, and I liked that a lot. I thought it was better than WCW just kind of advertising their magazine.
Yeah.
I understand.
It was a fun commercial.
Oh, absolutely. But it was just... I liked that WWF accentuated their wrestling as opposed to just hey, buy our shit.
Right.
They did do that with the 900 line where you could find out information about, is Brian Pillman coming to the WWF?
Whoa.
Pay $1.49 per minute and find out.
It's what?
Yeah,
there's really nothing that compares to that now.
No.
How could you sell information like that? But anyway.
Yeah, anyway.
One thing that both brands actually had, it was the exact same kind of thing, was the move of the week, the sponsored move of the week.
Yeah, I like that Raw's was from the previous week, though.
Yeah,
cool.
It was the Sega Saturn Slam of the Week.
Sega!
Of course, they had some 32 bits of power, and then here's the move.
That's a lot of power.
And
Holy
it was,
crap.
right? 32 bits. That's a lot of bits.
Yeah.
But it was Austin and Savio Vega.
Yep.
and it was like a rope match, leather
strap match, which is
a very creative name.
Oh yeah, and then Nitro introduced theirs after the Booker T and Scott Steiner match. So
it was the Pep Boys power move of the week, and it was from the very first match of the week.
Strange. It's like it's predetermined or something.
Yeah. That's ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. That's not. Come on, they didn't know that was gonna happen.
It was just that good of a move.
Yeah,
right?
It was fantastic. You did the over the head, belly to belly. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So it was really cool. WWF had the kind of satellite type interview with Shawn Michaels.
Yeah.
Which was okay, but it felt kind of flat because
it was really just Shawn sitting there with a stink face holding the belt while Jim Cornette flapped his gums, which is what he does.
Yeah, and I don't get on Jim for doing his job as he's trying to get heat, he's being a heel.
He doesn't have to try.
No.
He just gets it.
But he kind of stepped on the world champion because they just stopped talking to Shawn. Like, it wasn't well, thanks, Shawn Michaels, and back,
Right,
no, it was just literally Shawn stopped talking, and that was it.
Yeah.
So, I wasn't a fan of that. I was not a fan of the overabundance of Deborah McMichael on Nitro, because, that was rough.
I mean, kudos to this young class act, Scott Steiner.
Absolutely.
For letting Deborah talk. She interrupted his on the ramp interview because she was so upset. And Scott Steiner, this
stand-up gentleman that he is,
respectful man,
absolutely
lets Gene. He's like, you know what? She seems really upset. Why don't you go ahead and talk to her? I'm gonna go backstage, and he leaves. And I'm like, wow, this guy has so much respect for women.
Yeah, clearly Scott Steiner values and treasures women to the utmost degree of respect. So it was really cool.
He's just gonna be like the baby face of the company.
Absolutely, he will be the future Sting, 100%. I can't wait to see this journey that Scott Steiner is going to take into being the greatest babyface since Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Wait, Scott Steiner? Wasn't there another wrestler with that name?
I don't think so.
Big Papa Pump?
Nah, it must have been Rick.
That's got to be another
guy. There's no way it was that nice young gentleman, Scott.
Beautiful young man.
A beautiful, gorgeous mullet.
Mullet.
But yeah, I felt like Deborah's segments were just a little goofy, and it was like she was trying to remember scripted lines.
Or she's looking up, and he's very upset and scared, and I just don't want this to happen.
There are those would say it was very much on par with a Roman Reigns promo.
Oh,
I'm kidding.
Ouch.
I love Roman. I don't think that.
Ouch.
Yeah, but it was just a little odd that they dedicated so much time to her.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it did work with Flair and Anderson attacking their opponents backstage.
Right, there was a purpose to it.
Yeah,
it just wasn't really it wasn't delivered well. But what are you gonna do?
Can I tell you what I enjoyed the most from Nitro's segments?
What?
The Macho Man Randy Savage coaching Kevin Green and Steve Mongo McMichael. And not because he was delivering this, like, amazing knowledge, because he would never be afraid to get too intense.
No, he actually said don't be too intense.
Don't be afraid to get too intense.
No, he said don't be too intense.
I could have sworn he said don't be afraid to get too intense.
Oh, he said you can't be too intense. And I was like, Macho?
Well, he's incredibly intense.
Right? That's why it stuck out to me.
Yeah. But the thing that stuck out for me is he's screaming in Kevin Green, a pro football player, Kevin Green,
he's in his face being macho.
And Kevin Green is marking out while it's happening because he's like, oh yeah, talk to me. And I was like...
that's in quotes.
Is he getting turned on by this? Like, he's like, yeah, Macho, scream at me more. Say dig it. Tell me to snap into a Slim. They were eating Slim Jims.
Well, that's what gave them the idea. To call him to be their coach.
I need to call you know what? This is really making me feel strong. I need to call Macho Man Randy Savage. It was really cool.
It was fun. WCW did do a lot more segments. They did video packages and vignettes for matches that were going to be in the pay-per-view.
Absolutely.
They did a backstage interview with what's his name, who was going against Gato? Conan.
Yeah, Conan, the United States heavyweight champion.
With Conan, who didn't have a match, but we still got to see him, and he cut a promo on his opponent.
Exactly, which is another cool thing because it's making a presence of another one of your champions on your show, and he's not having to wrestle. He's not having to take a bump, but he still has an appearance on the show.
You know what he's doing.
And they did the same thing with the Cruiserweight champion with Dean Malenko by showing a video package of him and his opponent, Rey Mysterio. So another cool thing that on
kind of keeps you abreast of everything.
Yeah, on WWF's show, the only thing we saw was a 2-minute pissed off looking Shawn Michaels, who's our world whatever, I don't care.
I'm just a sexy boy.
Sexy boy. But, we didn't see the tag champions. We didn't see, as Kevin Owens would say, the Intercontinental Champion. We didn't see that. So, I kind of didn't like that. I would have preferred maybe like just a vignette or something, a presence.
More of a presence of the important guys on your roster.
Exactly, because, they are. Like, your champions are pretty important. Whereas WCW showed, in one way or another, every champion on their roster.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's you've got more time, so you can do something like that easier.
So you work that kind of stuff in without worrying about sacrificing the matches.
Yeah, and that's another, what I think was the biggest separation between the two shows was the production value. WCW looked much more modern.
They had a lot of different camera angles, a lot of sweeping shots, a lot of transitions between angles, like fades and such.
Their graphical presentations were much more impressive. I mean, they used a lot of graphics, a lot of focus on the WCW logos on when guys were making their entrance, when they were doing shots of the crowd. That was another thing they did.
Yeah, they used more shots of the crowd. They closed up, it's like, oh, they're cheering this guy, oh, they're booing this guy. So oh, this guy must be a bad guy.
They seem to kind of show more of the arena, like backed out shots of the arena a little bit more.
To be fair, where they were, they definitely had more to show than Raw did.
Absolutely.
Because they actually had rafters and people in seats like above eye line, whereas at Raw it was just like one level.
Yeah, it was, but although I will say Raw sounded much louder than Nitro.
You could hear the crowd way more, which is, I'm sure, why Vince and King screamed at us the whole time.
That's my issue that I kind of had with Raw's commentary is I like Vince as a commentator to a point. I like King as a commentator to a point, but there was nobody that could kind of level them out or rack them back because, like, when Vince would get excited, Vince would be very Vince McMahon, Monday Night Raw, later than Jerry the King, wow, 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 wow. And I'm like, Vince, why are you screaming?
Yelling.
Vince, just, buddy, you're here. You need to be, like, around here.
But when you have King opposite of you, there is no here.
Yeah, it was like they were kind of trying to top each other to the point where they were literally screaming at one another.
But what I noticed, especially when we switched over to Nitro, they had headsets.
Yeah.
They didn't have headsets in Raw.
Yeah, King and Vince were just talking into wired mics. They were Vince McMahon.
They were yelling at each other.
Maybe they just couldn't hear.
It really seemed that way. They didn't even have earpieces. So they're, here we are tonight, McMahon. But, Bischoff and Zabisco and everybody, they had headphones with mics, so they could hear each other and they weren't yelling at us.
Yeah. And I forgot to mention this. On Nitro, on Raw, the segment that I didn't particularly care for was the King and Warrior segment.
That was weird.
It was because
not really like weird, just like, why are we doing this?
Yeah, and I know that they're, building a story between them, so I appreciate that, but it was more of the ending of it, because King hits him with the picture that he painted, Warrior shakes the ropes and just runs away. He didn't chase King, he didn't try, like, there wasn't a slam and a splash or like a big punch, it was run. So, it was a little odd. I'm interested to see where that's going to go.
Yeah.
But
it was just kind of like a forced way to have Warrior out there in front of the camera.
Yeah, and he had a hat on. He looked like
had a hat, was wearing black paint. He looked very not Warrior-ish. He just looked like a giant Shawn Michaels.
He kind of did, which is odd. So, really we're looking forward to kind of what's next,
Yeah.
On the next Nitro, we're going to get to see the fallout of the Great American Bash. So I'm interested to see how that's going to play out, if There'll be any titles that'll change hands with, like, maybe Luger captures the world title. Maybe Gato upsets Conan.
Maybe. What happens with Hall and Nash?
Exactly. You know, who's going to emerge the Cruiserweight champion. So, very excited to see, who's going to win between Kevin Green, Steve Mongo McMichael, and, you know, the two horsemen. You know, so I'm interested to see that. Of course, Raw, we're going to continue with more of King of the Ring. Really excited to see that play out more.
Yeah, because this is going to be the one before the King of the Ring tournament ends in a pay-per-view, so maybe it'll be a little more exciting than it was this week.
Absolutely. So each week, as we go through and review these shows, we are going to crown who we feel is the winner. We'll do it individually, so you know, we don't necessarily always come to an agreement of what we thought, but
at the end of the series, we will tally up and see who actually won in our eyes.
Yeah, and if you guys would like, you know, please comment who you feel was the superior show of the week, and we can kind of keep a running tally of that. You know, the viewers vote and the Tandem Fandom vote.
Yeah. So who do you think this week? June 10th.
It was a very even show in terms of wrestling, but I believe I have to give it to WCW's Monday Nitro, simply on the presentation. It felt crisper than Raw. There was a lot better flow and organization in terms of storyline elements. There was
more storyline elements, period.
Absolutely. So it's a little unfair because it is a 2-hour program, but we also saw a variety of match. We saw tag matches. We saw singles matches. We saw, you know, different types of matches all along, and I have to go with Nitro this week.
And then I'm going to have to agree for basically the same reasons.
Yeah, it just, this week I think Nitro felt like the better show to me. And I don't always think presentation is the most important thing, but when it comes down to the wrestling being really even, I think the presentation just pushed it up, because the quantity of matches didn't make it better, because quality-wise they were even.
Well, apples to apples, you know, it was 4 matches per hour.
Yeah,
so they really only had one more match if you compare them on the same level.
And really, the Squire Dave Taylor Hacksaw Jim Duggan match, not great compared. It was worse than every match on Raw. So
yeah,
so you could even throw that one out, you know, comparatively.
Completely.
But yeah, Monday Nitro, one more for the bad guy.
Well, I think that wraps us up for this week.
Absolutely. You know, thanks for taking these first steps into the time machine with us. We hope you enjoyed the show as much as we enjoyed breaking it down and sharing our opinions with you guys. You know, feel free to comment and let us know what you guys think about it.
That's right. Please like, subscribe, and comment below. And follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to keep up with what we're doing next.
You know, again, thanks for watching, guys. We appreciate it. And as we always say here on the show, if you're going to be a fan,
bring a friend.